our relationship with God. One of the main things, though, is getting to know yourself better, because you were made in the image of God. So the better you know you, the better you will know God. So this is going to be a little more of a workshop than it is just sitting there listening to me talk. I'd like to hand out this, make sure I got the right one. Yeah, these sheets. One of the main things that's going to help you in your relationship with God is the practice of journaling. There are many ways, by the way. This isn't the only way. There are many, many things we can do to draw closer to God. Journaling is one of the most important ways, because by journaling about your day, about your feelings, it helps you to get to know you better. And when you know you better, again, you will know God better. So, as you see, we have a definition there. I like etymology, which is word origins. And so this tells us a little bit about the word journal. Okay, it's a daily record of experiences or observations. For example, we have the Wall Street Journal. Okay, people keep journals. So the implication is daily, or at least very often. It's important to understand, though, if you look down to where it says the rules of journaling, there are no rules. So you do not have to write every day. You do not have to do anything. Okay? If you think you have found a rule about journaling, which is rule number two, see rule number 1. Okay, so this is very freelance. It's very much up to you how you want to keep your journal, if you want to keep a journal. I would imagine that all of you have a journal of some sort or other. It can be the calendar in the kitchen where you write down who's coming over for dinner. That's a record, that's a journal. Some people print out their emails. That's a journal, because they're all dated and they can tell you, what was going on in a particular situation. Some people have, if you will, photographic journals. They take a lot of pictures. So a journal really is a way for you to keep track of things in the past, so that you can use that as kind of a jumping off spot, if you want to call it that, so that you can use it as a place to remember what has happened in the past, and not only the events like a newspaper would, but also how you felt about the events. That's really the difference between a journal and just a newspaper. I mean, you can look up newspapers on the microfiche in the library. Okay, so looking down further, okay, the format. What is a journal? Well, journals can look like all kinds of things. They can look like little books. They can look like pads of paper. They can be special and be spiral. They can look like a loose leaf binder. They can even look like a computer. A lot of people, including me, keep their journals on a computer. Or, like we mentioned earlier, they can look like a calendar. And just as you write things down, there's your journal. Now, what do you think the purpose of keeping a journal would be for you? Why would you want to keep a journal?
To reference back.
To reference back what?
An event.
Okay, an event.
How you felt.
How you felt.
To remember, in case you're prone to not remember.
Okay. To remind yourself of things. How about to see the work of God in your life? You can track trends, if you will. You can track, like if you go back a year from now and look at what you wrote today, you'll be like, oh, I forgot all about the fact that that was something I was struggling with. And then you can think back and say, oh, wow, that was resolved, or this is what God did, or whatever. It helps you to understand the faithfulness of God. Okay? And that, again, is important in a relationship. Just think of your other relationships that you have with a spouse, or a parent-child relationship, or a friendship. Okay? You want to communicate with each other. And the key to that is the more you spend time together, the better you'll know each other. And so spending time with God is very important to helping you develop your relationship with Him. And one way to do that is to journal. So, people say to me all the time, well, I know I should keep a journal, but I don't really. Why do you think people might not keep a journal, especially if they think it's something that's good to do?
Because I'm lazy.
Okay, because they're lazy. That's one reason.
Sometimes it's hard to look back in the past.
Okay, because it's difficult sometimes to look back in the past. Can you say some more about that? Because if you're writing about today, what does that have to do with, you don't have to look back in the past if you're going to write a journal entry today.
But I do write a journal, and I do look back
Okay,
at what I've written previously.
Okay.
And it is hard to read some of what I've written.
okay, it is hard, right. What does reading what you wrote in the past do? Does it help you? Does it hurt you? Does
Well, it reminds me of the events, but it does show me God's faithfulness.
Okay. Okay. So overcoming hard things can be a reason to keep a journal. And you may decide to not write about a hard thing because you don't want to look at it again. The thing with journals, though, since there are no rules, you don't have to look back at what you've written. You can, but you don't have to. But you're right, it does show God's faithfulness. What are some other reasons people don't keep journals?
Permanent record.
Permanent record, okay? Say more.
That it's a permanent record.
It's a permanent record if you want it to be.
Yeah.
Some people write journals and throw them away. I don't recommend it, but some people do that. And when you do that, you don't have the record anymore. So it is a record, which is why it's really important if you're going to keep a journal to keep it in a safe place. Some people keep it on their computer with a password. Some people put it in the trunk of their car by their spare tire so that nobody knows where it is. But even if they did know where it is, they can't get to it because usually the car is at work with them.
Yeah.
Okay. So there are all kinds of ways to protect what you write and keep it away from people that you would rather not know. It's also important for you to know that your journal is sacred. It is not for general consumption, because if you don't know that, then you're not going to be honest. If you're not going to be honest, there's not a lot of point in writing. Okay, so why else do you think some people don't keep journals?
Sometimes, depending upon what you might be journaling about, it might be very difficult to admit or to acknowledge whatever it is you are journaling about.
True.
So it's hard.
It can be very difficult because you don't want to say, well, I did this today and I know I shouldn't have done this.
Yeah.
So, sure.
It's so easy to take things out of context that my concern is that if you really are honest, which I agree, if there's no point if you're not going to be honest. Most people don't really want people to know all the little deep dark things going on inside their mind. And there's no guarantee at all anyone would really understand if they read it. It's that old saying about reading somebody else's mail. Right now I'm reading through letters to my grandpa. These letters are all from 1905 to 1920. Some of them are from my grandma, and they're delightful. But there's also several other women before he was married. And you're reading into their lives and all these little comments and feelings from these women especially. And I'm looking for historical reasons.
Ah.
Because we have certain artifacts in the family, I'm looking for information about references. But I'm also,
Taking in all of those.
I'm taking this all in and getting a picture of how life was in 1918. And I was also from 1912, the year the Titanic went down, and I'm hearing references to plays about people long dead.
Mhm.
Anyway, these people would not have appreciated that I'm reading what they're writing about. So anything that's not what I'm looking for, I'm throwing away.
Mhm.
But I'm keeping things that mean something to me, not very many. But that's the key fear I would have is how could they possibly really understand the context when I can barely express the right context?
Mhm. Right. Okay.
That's my concern.
Yeah. Okay. So fear certainly is one.
Yes.
How about time? Anyone say, "Oh, I just don't have time to do that"? I'm sorry.
Time is a big one. I
Time is a
think,
big
because
one.
it's-
Okay.
They're just, with 3 kids and work and all the things, but that always comes up as an excuse for all of the good stuff.
Excuse.
It's an
Good.
excuse.
Good word. Okay. That's why something like this is a great journal. You write 1 or 2 words in each box, and that's it. Some people, you may be one of those people, they save their calendars at the end of the year so they can look back and they can say, oh yeah, on October 4th we had so-and-so over for dinner, and then that jogs their memory. So time can be a concern, but it doesn't really have to be necessarily, okay? Is there anyone here that wants to keep a journal?
I like the idea of it. I've
Yeah.
tried several times. I
Okay,
have many journals.
uh-huh,
There's about 3 pages in each one.
okay, and it stops, and it pauses.
Yes.
It doesn't stop, it pauses. Now, they may be very long pauses.
Yes.
What's your
Okay.
name?
Pat.
Pat and Bob. I'm with Pat. I would like to, but you've shed some light on something that I hadn't really realized. My life is full of journals of one kind or another. Some people call them blogs. I'm from an IT background.
Okay,
Anything you do in the background, there are logs. Date, time, information. You never see them, but they're in the background to log what's going on for historical and other things. But on my computer at home, I use these little notepad files to do projects. I have a group of guys I go hunting with from the church, and I have all their names and numbers, and I have notes from the last hunting trip. And I have turns out I have lots of journals
yes.
and categories, because that's how my mind works. But they're everywhere. They really surround me. Jeannie, my wife, just went and bought her yearly little calendar she keeps on the desk. So I can always go there to know what she's going to be doing tomorrow. And if she's not in the house, I know she's here. That's what she does. And then we share a common calendar in Apple, family version, so that if we make a change, she sees it, or I make a change, she makes a change, I can see it. So we're journaling that way in all these other different ways. But I'm with Pat, I would like to do something a little deeper that I could keep very secure. I might have to passwords.
That's okay.
Might have to encrypt it.
Okay. So I presume you're here because, again, this is part of spiritual formation, and I will get into a few other things as we go. I'll just tell you now, this is very condensed because I do a 12-hour session just on journaling. Okay, but there's a lot of other ways to develop your relationship with God. I'm focusing on this because it's a little more tangible, but I'll get to some others as we wrap up. Okay, so if you decide you're going to keep a journal, select the format, the writing implement that fits you. Some people have a special pen that they like to use, or some people like to do calligraphy, and so they use that kind of a writing instrument. And you can change them later. See rule number 1. Okay, on the back side, beginning tips. These can be helpful. They're not rules, they're suggestions. Okay, you probably want to date every entry. And that's for obvious reasons that we've really already talked about. Write when you can concentrate the best. Now, that could be the morning for people, it could be the evening, it could be right before or right after you read your Bible, it could be on your lunch break, but figure out a time when you can have even just a couple of minutes to write something down. It does not have to be complete sentences. It does not have to be grammatically correct. Your English teacher from 6th grade is not going to come haunt you. You don't have to have your verb and your noun, your subject agree in number or any of that stuff, okay? The grammar police will not come after you. Okay, look at the third one there. Any entry is better than no entry. I was going to put this in, but I want you to write it so that it sticks. Right next to that, you could please write, the shortest pencil is longer than the longest memory. The shortest pencil is longer than the longest memory. What does that mean?
Means if your memory fails, you still have a record.
Okay. It means that with life being what it is and days kind of melding into each other and so on and so forth, you're very likely to forget some point or something that ends up being important to you. If you've written it down, you have it. Like you were talking about, you have a record. If you haven't written it down, you might say, oh, well, I'm going to remember that. You might, but you probably won't. So just keep that in mind. Some people, believe it or not, keep their journals on sticky notes and they stick notes all over the place. Not terribly recommended, but if you're going to do that, at least get a piece of paper and put the notes on the paper chronologically so that you have some kind of record of what you've written. Okay, and then it talks about privacy and that kind of thing. Okay, what ideas do you have that you think others might find helpful or useful in keeping a journal? Told you I was going to make you work.
I was thinking about it the other day for my kids, because just about motherhood, like today. I mean, I'm mad because I didn't do better journaling with like the things they used to say and do, and they'll randomly come up. He has a great memory, and so like I'm like, oh yeah, but my memory is not that good, and then I think, wouldn't this be nice, just in case, I don't know, I'm not around for my kids, just to look in here and be like, oh okay, Mom went through this too, or Dad, or just as for family.
Yeah, you can still write about it in retrospect.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sitting here and I'm just now remembering that Sally said da 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 da.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So, who else has a thought or a suggestion?
I think about it for genealogy purposes.
Okay, good.
Because I started getting into that a couple of years ago, and we have a letter from my great-great-grandma to her mom, and it just kind of gives insight as to what they were dealing with at the time. She was talking about how a baby had died and how she had to hold the baby on the way to the cemetery, and it was just part of life. It wasn't like she didn't belabor the point. It was just how
happening?
it was. And the way it's written, you can tell she probably didn't go to school for very long, but that kind of made it even more real. So I just think about like, what am I leaving behind for my great-great-grandkids?
Scary thought.
And I just feel bad.
I know.
Yes, and you think of how the world was in that day and age. The baby might have died from something that today is curable with an aspirin or a shot of penicillin, but how tough life was for them. I encourage children to journal, and I give them this sheet, which basically it has their name, the date, and a circle. That's the face. What is your feeling? How are you feeling today? And then they write, today I feel, and they write the emotion and because. And it's just, a little one sheet thing. but it can get them in the habit of not only identifying what they feel, but keeping a record. You know, today I feel happy because the teacher called on me and I got a gold star or whatever. But through the years, that's going to mean something to them.
It's also so healthy to do something that we're not taught in our culture to do, especially guys.
Yes.
80-20, and that is separate feelings from thoughts. And our family had to go through some therapy, and they taught us when it's a feeling, you only can use feeling words.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
So you don't say, if they say, how are you feeling? You don't say, I feel like a pizza. I go, no, you're hungry. So what's the thought? I think I'll have a pizza. You have to separate those, because otherwise the enemy can play whale with your thought life. Sure. You don't realize what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You know, the only other thing I was going to add to your last point was, one, don't assume your memory is going to be the same as today, as tomorrow as it's going to be today.
Absolutely.
And if you've decided, I do this all the time, I want to remember this.
Yeah.
Then you have to. If you don't do something about it, then you're going to be lost in maybe tomorrow or maybe tonight.
Uh-huh.
What was so important? Because I don't remember now.
Yeah.
So you have to do something about it.
Yes.
When
Very
you
well.
think of it,
Yes.
it's there for a reason. So do something about it. Because if you don't, you're just not going to remember. I'm having that trouble too. My memory is really going.
Mm.
So my wife's wondering if she's going to remember. I'm going to remember who she is, but that's sometimes funny, sometimes not.
Yeah.
But I think just don't assume.
Well, and that's where the little sticky notes can come in handy. I
Mhm.
wouldn't recommend them as your permanent journal.
No.
That can jog your memory. But the other thing is, if you're trying to remember something, do something that's going to make you feel just slightly uncomfortable. For example,
Yeah.
take your ring off of one hand and put it on the other hand. It'll feel so weird that you're not going to forget until you can't put it back until you've done the thing. Or put your watch on the other wrist or something like that. And that will remind you.
Well, memories, even at a young age. I know when I was raising my children, and they would say funny things or, whatever. I'm like, yeah, in my mind, I'll never forget that. I've forgotten practically every bit of it
Sure.
because I didn't write it down.
Yep.
There's just a minuscule few little things that I actually do remember.
Yep.
It's
Mom always
sad.
said to put it in the baby book.
Yes.
Okay, and that's why our oldest, she's got a lot of stuff in the baby book.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cooper's, he's 9, and I think is still wrapped up in the original plastic.
Oh, no, I put some stuff.
He's not here with
Great
us.
intentions.
And the more children you have, the more pristine the baby books remain.
It's true.
That's because so much life is happening in
Mhm.
between, especially if you have more than one child.
Yep, that's
You
right.
know, life is really busy and you're getting from point A to point B and what happens in between and then the next day starts all over again.
And that's why pictures can be such a
Moving
good
and shaking.
journal or supplement to your journal. You'd be like, oh yeah, we were running around like crazy trying to do this, and she put a shoe on her page or something, and it was so funny. You know?
Yes.
Okay, so what do you put in a journal?
No rules.
There's no rules. Okay, anything. That's right. That's what that says. Content. So what do I write? Anything is the correct answer. It might seem kind of vague at first, but there are a few ideas listed under that that can be helpful to you. You can get a headline from the newspaper. What's a newspaper? Or from any of the media, and write what you're feeling about it. We just had the anniversary of January 6th. Okay, write what you feel about that whole thing. You might have had a disagreement with someone. Write how you feel about that. You might think that sounds a little like you're dwelling on things, but actually, here's a secret. As you write about things, you take all that emotion and stuff that you're trying to shove down, and you give it a place to go, and you actually can feel relieved once you do that. You can write what I call an unsent letter. I especially use this if someone has passed away. Oh, your mother died. I'm so sorry. We talk a little bit, and then I say, why don't you try writing her a letter, tell her how you feel, tell her what you think, tell her the things that you remember that she taught you. And again, instead of having all that stuff kind of scrunched up inside, it gives you an outlet. And that's what you want to do. You're not going to forget her, but you are going to be able to move on more quickly. You don't have to write anything. We already talked about pictures. You can doodle, you can draw, you can get pages from, coloring pages from the internet or from a coloring book and color. And you can think about, why did you choose that color? Or why did you choose that particular design? What was it about that drew me to it? Maybe it was because I'm feeling kind of in turmoil right now, and that design said peace to me. So maybe that's why you choose that design. So it doesn't have to be words necessarily. It can be words, it is often words, but it doesn't have to be. Okay, so again, instead of just learning stuff, you're learning about you who are made in the image of God. And by knowing you better, you will know him better. Now, there are some kinds of journaling you can do that do involve the Bible. There's one where you can write what the scripture was that you read today, and then you write how it impacted you. You know, the one verse can have a plethora of things that are meaningful to someone. One might be, okay, well, this is something I need to work on, or this might be a good behavior as opposed to the way I've been reacting to people, or whatever. But you simply write the date, write the reference to the scripture, and how it impacted you. And again, that's the way that God talks to you. Once you actually start doing this, you will be amazed at the things that will come to mind. And it's like a lot of other things. Some things are only understood in the doing of them. I can explain to you what it's like to fly on an airplane. I can tell you about going through security, and I can tell you about waiting at the gate and getting on the plane and finding my seat. I can tell you about all that until you go to the airport, get on a plane, buckle the seatbelt, and are in the seat when the plane takes off. You will not understand what it's like to fly. You'll have knowledge of it, but you won't have the experience of it. And that's exactly what is going on here with the journal. I can give you knowledge about it. You can have knowledge about God, but until you actually do it, you will not understand the experience of it. So, that being said, where's my paper? Yes, here it is. So, pass out some paper, take as many sheets as you think you would like.
Just take one.
You can color, you can write, you can draw,
I will be right.
you can,
I wish I could draw.
you know, it doesn't have to be beautiful. My stick figures need help, okay? I am not an artist. You can doodle, you can do whatever. I will give you one or two topics that you could write about, or you can write about anything. If you had a tough morning this morning, you can write about that. If you are looking forward to doing something wonderful tomorrow, Sunday afternoon, it might actually be warm and sunny. You can write about that. If you want something specific to write about, here's something you can write about. Complete this sentence. I wonder. What do you wonder about? Okay, so that's one. Another one would be, I wish I could finish the sentence. So I'll give you some time to kind of think those things through and take a look at what you wonder about. You also have some additional suggestions on the back of the page here. So those are a couple of things you can write about, or anything you want. When I teach this in my spiritual formation class, that's always the last thing. You can write about this, or anything you want. To mind that you hadn't thought about before? Did that start bringing you in a certain direction where you thought, I need to think more about this? What was that like for you? Okay, and you were only writing for like 6 minutes. Okay, I'm amazed at how long some of your entries are. That's pretty amazing.
Is that long? 6 minutes?
Yeah, that's all.
It felt like about 45 seconds.
Well, that's the thing. Once you get going, the time just goes like that. But speaking of which, that's another thing you can do if you say, I don't have any time. Set a timer for 5 minutes. No more than 5 minutes. When the timer goes off, you're done. But at least you have written something. Okay. There are no rules, but does anyone want to share anything that they wrote about, discovered, thought about?
We're really struggling with our kiddos right now. Well, it's parenthood. But it's, our oldest is now a teenager and the second one's almost there. And the third one just has to deal with everybody. But there's been some things that we've been trying to work on as a family, and I don't know if it's because I'm here or what, but I'm like, can I give this to God? Can I ask? I don't know. I'm like, what does that mean exactly? And it kind of soothed me just a tad, because I am on edge all the time about it right now, and I'm like, oof. But for about 30 seconds, I was like this too shall move forward, and it's okay. Yeah, we're doing our best.
So you had a little bit of a breather. That's good.
Yeah.
It's good to have a break.
I'll read mine.
Oh, okay.
I wonder what the Lord has planned for me in the coming year. I am now retired and looking to bring my retired life to a more fulfilling point, to know Jesus better, to meet new friends, and to make a difference in people's life. I have already seen prayers answered today and have such hope that my path to a more fulfilling life has begun. I feel more confident that Jesus has a plan for me.
Very good.
I get emotional.
That's okay.
It's not sad tears.
Those are good feelings.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And weren't we just talking about that? Developing a relationship doesn't so much involve your head, it involves your heart. In a sense, you need an empty head and a full heart. That's what you want to do when you're developing a relationship with God. You know a lot about Him, but do you know Him? See, there's a difference there. Thank you. Anyone else have anything they want to share? Okay, so I told you I would tell you about some other things that you can do for spiritual formation. And I am talking with Regan about maybe doing like a workshop on some weekend or something like that. So I don't know yet. We haven't finalized plans, but there's been several people that have asked me to teach more about this. So I will just name some of the things. If you want to look them up online, you can do that. At the bottom of the paper I gave you is my phone number and my email address. You can contact me there if you need more information. For those of you that don't know, I'm a licensed therapist. I'm also a spiritual director, so I have some experience with this stuff, okay? Other things that you can do, one thing is called Lectio Divina. It's Latin, it means sacred reading, okay? And that is a specific way of reading through a passage of scripture, reflecting on it, thinking it through, seeing how it applies to you. And so that's one way to increase your ability to connect with God. Another thing is called the examen, E-X-A-M-E-N. And I need to make a distinction here. It's not an examination of your conscience. Some higher churches have you examine your conscience and go to confession and that kind of thing. That's not what this is. This is an examination of consciousness. In other words, what are you aware of that has transpired in your life? I have an example that I just got yesterday. One of my aunts died over the summer. I had no clue until yesterday when her son wrote me a note and said, well, we got your Christmas card, but she's been dead for 6 months. You know? So as you examine what has gone on in your life, you may become aware of things that you didn't know about. So that's what it's called, the examine, and it's an examination of consciousness. Not, okay, I did this wrong and this wrong and this wrong. Okay, so there's a very clear distinction there. Okay. Some other things that people do is they walk a labyrinth or do a prayer walk. I don't know if any of you have any experiences with that. A labyrinth is basically, it looks like a maze, but it's not. It has one big important difference. You cannot get lost in a labyrinth. There is one way in and there is one way out. Okay, but it's a prayer walk. You are walking, you're physically walking along this path that is kind of turns back on itself. And that is so that you can kind of be outside, put all the other distractions to the side, and just think and walk and talk to God as you do this. And since you can't get lost in it, I mean, it's on the ground, so you could just walk straight out if you wanted to. But since you can't get lost in it, you don't have to worry about, okay, do I turn here or do I turn there or what do I do? Okay, so that's another way that people connect with God. And there are many other ways too, but this is just a little tiny appetizer, if you will, of some things that are available to us as we seek to connect with God, to reconnect with God, to connect more deeply with God. Okay, so I want to leave the last 5 minutes. Does anyone have any thoughts, questions, things you'd like to share? Rotten tomatoes to throw?
This is very good. I happen to be the person right now, if you send a prayer request to the website, I'm the one who gets it. And I'm the one who sends it out to the prayer chain people. Or you can choose, you have choices. You can only go to pastoral staff. And so often when reading, and we get prayer requests that no one sees because they're from around the world, that they have found the website. Some of them I can't repeat what people try to send. But as we get them, my thought was, this is very good to help how to pray. Because the ones I don't feel are appropriate for the church, I still pray for that person. I have one guy, a couple times a year, he'll write and say, I don't know where in the world he is, but he's like, please pray that in my divorce that it all goes well for me and not my ex. And I'm kind of like, I'm praying, but I'm not praying what he's asking for. So all of this helps me to really think better about my thoughts, what I should be praying, and what the Lord wants me to pray, which I think is more the point. And this is very helpful for me to focus. I'm like Martha in the scriptures. I get worried and bothered about many things. And like a character in one of Tolkien's books, I get one thing drives out another. And I get off the path. And I've lost my breadcrumbs. I can't get back to where I was. So as I'm praying, that's why I'm doing the prayers, because it helps me set aside, focus, pray, and then do the mechanical administrative part to send it out. But then I trust everybody's doing their own thing. But this really helps me be more intentional, be more focused, to push out distractions. So this is very valuable stuff. One of the things I wrote was, I wish I could be better at discerning between my thoughts, the Lord's thoughts, and the adversary's thoughts. And the thought, I don't know where the scripture is, where it says, take every thought captive. Look at them, because as I've said in men's group a couple times, you think every thought that comes into your head is just your thought, you've got another thought coming. Because we have to be discerning, because sometimes the enemy will take a strong emotion and put a thought at that time, and you think because the emotion's real, and the emotions are all real, that the thoughts can be kooky. So at any rate, this just has all helps me focus on what's going on.
Good. Good. And you bring up an important point. A lot of people will tell me that they always get distracted. They'll start praying, and the next thing you know, their mind is like, 25 links down the way. Write your prayers. The book of Psalms is written down prayers. That's what it is. Write your prayers. Even if you start to wander, you can pull your mind back and say, oh, that's where I was. Okay? So, and that's another tool to use for spiritual formation.
I have a question for you, Bob. When you get these prayers and you're reading them and then you send them off, are you able to let them go?
That's a really good point. Not at first.
Because I find that's really hard. We have a women's group and you have friends that come to you and ask you for prayer.
Yeah.
And it's really, for me, the bottom line is the battle belongs to the Lord.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And we know that. But especially when it's people that you know really, really well, and they're struggling with something, it's, you know that the Lord has got it, but still you've taken that in. And I want to know how you let it go.
Well, in my mind, like I said, I've separated, or I'm in the process of learning. I won't have learned the whole thing when the Lord takes me home, but I'm learning the difference between thoughts and feelings. So the way my personality that He made me is exactly opposite from my wife. I'm structured, I'm linear, I'm detailed. This is how I process information, and He made me that way. I can do the other, it just doesn't come natural. She's exactly the opposite. So what I do on this is, it's easy as a detailed structured person to compartmentalize those thoughts, those prayers, and set them aside. What's not so easy is my feelings.
Right.
Okay, today or this week, okay, this is not real. I'm saying, okay, 3 cancers, 2 deaths, 5 divorces.
Sure.
A child was killed.
Right.
And I can compartmentalize and set those aside and have thoughts. I can deal with that. But the feelings, I have to quickly take those to the Lord, and I have to do it over and over. Or I can get overwhelmed with my family's back. So it's a good exercise, but I had to learn that at first. There were weeks when honestly I was just like, I can't look at the prayer.
Right.
I can't look at my email for a day or two.
Right.
Or I'll be a day or two late putting one out because it's like I'm just on overload. But the Lord's blessed me, and I've been able to just say, this is my ministry, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to send it out. And then that way I give it to the Lord, I give it to the prayer warriors. That's how I get it out. And then if it's something especially needy and it's appropriate, I'll share it with my wife, and we'll talk about the feelings. That's not easy for me because most guys don't talk about it. But the whole thing is helping me in all my life. That's what I do. I process it. I'm honest about my feelings. That makes me really sad to hear that. Oh Lord, what's your heart about this? I know you're brokenhearted. When I talk that out, it helps me.
And that's how you process it.
That's how I process
That's
it.
really helpful.
I have to say it out loud to
Thank
myself.
you.
So I talk to myself a lot, which that's the other thing my wife's worried
You have
But
the
again,
answers.
yeah.
No, it's like I do a verbal journal.
Okay, but that's exactly what we were talking about. You have all this stuff inside.
Yeah.
Talk it out, write it out, draw it out,
Yeah.
get it out somehow.
Absolutely. Our culture has taught us to stuff stuff down and don't
Mhm.
let anybody know. And it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of now that I've gotten some therapy and some training and the Lord has taught us. You just read the owner's manual. He's got a lot of stuff in there about how things are supposed to work. And so, yeah, but anyway, that's what I
Yeah,
do.
that's really good.
Okay, so it's 20 after. I have one more point that may address your situation. When someone comes to me and they have all this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
in my mind, I visualize they come in with a backpack that's got all their problems in it. We open the backpack, we dump it out, we look at all the stuff. By the time they leave, we put all the stuff back in the backpack. It's not mine. I can't steal it, I can't take it, it's not mine. We put it all back in the backpack, we will work on it again, it's yours, take it home with you. We can talk about how to deal with it, what to do with it, but in the end, it's not mine. I can't take it.
Yeah.
We're not
Yeah.
supposed to steal things from other people.
Yeah.
So. Okay, well, thank you for your attention. Call or email me with questions and have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you.
Thank